couple minutes in.
Do you need an extension cord for this thing? I got one if you want.
Yeah, then I could just show up.
Yeah, if you want.
Blind everybody from there, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's sort of you.
Yeah. No, it'd be easier.
How do you get closer?
I was wondering.
Okay.
Did you go play?
Not me, no. I told the kids though.
Did you?
Yeah. They were like, oh, oh.
Plugging right by his chair set.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they, some of them said,
I tried
well,
using that before.
maybe I can get out there tomorrow or.
The DVD.
So I said, well, if it works for you.
Stick a paper
Were
clip
there
in it
people
to
out there
Yeah,
find out.
today?
well, usually I use a pair of scissors and put
Later
them
in the day,
on the
I'll
inside.
text.
You would do it.
I mean, the wind was a little.
Yeah.
Better, bigger chance.
This is the one I sent out yesterday, I didn't realize them in the and this is just, I had to take it out. That's concerned.
I had
Because I don't know if I included you on the one, although I had a one quick addition that I realized yesterday. I could just go to litigation. Okay, I don't think I got it. Okay, it was a pretty quick.
Especially from my.
Grandma Small's one more day.
Oh,
yeah.
There's one more to go, right? Really?
They were in good condition.
All right, looks like everybody's here. And Seth, he said we're good.
I believe so, yeah, I'm just double checking that. Yeah, I think it's up, I'll just get it on my phone and check.
Okay, Deb, do you want to take roll call, please?
Corey,
Present.
Cody,
Yep.
Mark,
Yes.
Kyle.
Yes. All right, do we have any more additions to the agenda, or are they all on here?
The only thing I got a letter from Associated School Boards today. They have a board of directors position that's up that we need to vote on before, it's not till like May 15th, but I figure as long as we had it, we might as well do it tonight.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that I have to add there.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Corey,
Second.
second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
One thing I will say too is, after we get done with like the consent agenda, why don't we just jump to him right
Okay,
away,
yep.
so he doesn't have to wait around for all the
Yep.
reports?
Okay, do we have any conflict of interest disclosures?
Nope.
Okay, public input?
Nope.
Okay, in our consent agenda, we need a motion to approve the following: minutes of the regularly scheduled board meeting of February 8th, 2021, minutes of the Corn Belt Cooperative Board of Advisors meetings, February 17th, 2021, an amended contract for Mitchell Johnson, assistant track coach, financial reports, and claims for March. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Slade, second by Corey. Does anybody have any questions on anything?
Sounds like it. The Mitchell Johnson one, I was like, I didn't catch that one. What was
We had,
Mitchell's?
we had an open track position since last year that we were, due to a staff departing, that we were unable to fill with any of our other openings last year. So Mitch actually approached us and said he'd be willing to do that because nobody else was.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, and we'll, get down here, to Ken Winter. He's gonna talk about our lights, right?
Correct.
The light, the floor is yours.
Okay.
And just to give you a little backstory while he's handing that stuff out, he actually got a hold of Seth about doing just a walkthrough to kind of evaluate where our lighting is, and then he's given you guys a quote to do a retrofit to make everything LED in the building. And I'm not even gonna attempt to try to explain any of that.
So I'm Ken with GNR Controls, and one of our divisions is lighting upgrades. And so what I did is, like Kevin said, I came through your building and looked at, you know, what you have for lighting now. And the new technology is LED. And so there is some savings and things like that. So what I did is I broke it out into high school, middle school, and then kind of used the gym as the cutoff, and then elementary type deal. So I believe we're in the, is this the high school, middle school? Okay, so I got that right. So that should be the first thing that we have on your page, on your front here, is that. So basically I just went through and counted everything, and it's, to you guys, it's always amazing on how many lights you end up having. You know, just in your hallways, you know, that first line item, there are 2x4, 2 lamp with T8s. There was 78 of those throughout your hallways. And you can see with the what they're on for a year, the rate, you can see that you can spend about $1,000 a year just keeping those hall lights on. Going with a new LED flat panel, which is then a 29 watt, which is equivalent to what you have right now, which I can show you on this low demo here, you're going to be down to $537 a year. So your big ones are your classrooms. You have 261 fixtures in all your classrooms on this wing. So you can see they're $2,791, and if you were to look it over, it's $1,499. I did even look at upgrading your lights in the gym to LED. So I broke it out too, is the gym upper level where you have the weights and that, the gym floor, and then you have that auxiliary. I think that was the newer gym, but I actually said that was the older gym. So you can just kind of see on there, there's some T5s, T8s. You got some really good savings there. You can take them from, you know, 362 watts down to 162 watts. So we're removing quite a lot out of there. So you're going from $2,580 down to $1,155. So just in this wing here on savings, you have $5,513 is what you have for energy savings. And that would be, and then you can see the cost to, this includes materials, labor, disposal, everything basically coming in, taking out of that panel and putting in a new flat panel. So you get all new lights, completely all new. You're looking at $54,180. You take that from your savings, so you're at about a 9.8 year payback. And what's really interesting about these lights here is when you guys, you must do, I don't know if anybody, but you retrofitted these from a 4 lamp to a 2 lamp with a reflector. They used to be a 4 lamp T12, they retrofitted them to 2 lamp with reflectors. So, you know, your light level it went down a little bit. But with these new technology, here's just a 2x4 or 2x2 flat panel. And this is the medium one. There's 3 different settings on all these fixtures. So you can actually go less, or I mean that'd be more, or you can go less. So if you have a classroom that you have a teacher that says, I don't like that bright, I want to dim it down, all you have to do is push this little toggle switch on the back. Say you have a teacher that's like a little bit brighter, you kind of do the same thing here. That's kind of the uniqueness of these new flat panel technology. Cool thing, all sealed unit, no bugs. That seems to be a big seller for a lot of people, and there's that you don't get any bugs in any of the fixtures and stuff like that. So basically, that's just a turnkey project on the high school, middle school. And then I did the same thing, basically, if you were to look back on the next page, the elementary wing, which is some areas in that, like in that library, we're not going to replace those fixtures because of the style. Their fixtures are very nice design, decorative. So there they would just get new LED bulbs in those. that's kind of the technology, plus those fixtures are very expensive, so. And then you have some, in the, I believe, kind of in the comms, or actually, you got some can lights that are way up there on that slanted type ceiling. Those would just get LED bulbs in them also, so like that. So you can see in that area, you're looking at about $4,734 of energy savings. That project is $47,870, and that would have about a 10-year payback. And what I did too is in your thing, is just enclosed a couple of the cut sheets of the fixtures that we're talking about. You know, the flat panels. Basically, looking at the flat panels. So there's, you know, like over in that newer wing, there's some 1x4, they're just a little bit narrower in the hallways and things like that. Those could be all taken to an LED flat panel. And then basically all your classrooms would be the 2x4 panel. Then you can also see that the style light that I'm putting in, that I suggest putting in the gym, is these LED high bays. Basically, that's what you have in there now, is you have a T8 or a T5 high bay. You're just gonna go with an LED high bay. 1-for-1 replacement, pretty much the same thing. They're, I think they're hardwired, so we probably use the same cord and things like that. From what I see in a lot of the gyms that we've done, once you update them to the LEDs, the light level, you know, one I just did was at 45. Once we got done, it was at 62. So the light level was picked up really nice, and made it look a little bit brighter and things like that. And so that's why I didn't do that up in the balcony area, because you don't want to, you know, you're playing in the gym there, that balcony, you don't want it as bright as down in front as the other area. So plus, just was able to pick up some savings and still be plenty bright for those guys to be able to be up there and stuff like that. That other gym, I think, was kind of had a yellowish look to it. That would be, basically, you can see that the LEDs are pretty white. This is a 4,000 Kelvin light, so that would actually change the whole look of that gym pretty much, because of that yellowness would go away and it'd be a little bit whiter looking. So that's, you know, that's what we have a, you know, division that we do this now, and so we just, you know, this is a good opportunity. There's for places that be upgrading their lights and things like that. So any questions for me on anything?
I do have a question, and we might have talked about this when you, Seth, and I got together.
Yep.
So as far as, you know, if they decide that they want to do this, what's turnaround time, you know, best case scenario as far as when you would actually be able to get here and get it in?
Probably, in your case, we'd probably do it you know, over the summer vacation, work with your cleaning and stuff like that. This many fixtures, we're probably looking at probably a good month to get it done. We bring in our stuff and our scaffolding and get a dumpster and things like that out here, but, you know, like a room like this, you could use scaffolding versus, you know, using a ladder, or even if we do the gym at the same time, bring our lift in and things like that. So we're looking, you know, probably a good month, just depending on, you know, if we don't run into things like that, coordinated. A lot of times we've been doing some of these schools, we did, you know, Christmas break, any breaks that you have, 2-3 days, we'll come in and we'll get what we can. Another question that you can do it in phases, we're okay with that. You know, sometimes I have actually a couple schools that, you know, have a couple different buildings like yours, and so they did phase 1, you know, wanted to see what it turned out like. Got some good reviews, so then we went to phase 2. So you can do it in phases and things like that. Beersford School is going to do the whole project like this summer, but what they're doing now is, as their lights go out, they're buying new LED panels and replacing them until we get there and do the whole project. So
What would be, I guess I would call it a drop dead date, more or less, in terms of if they wanted to get it done this summer, when would you guys have to know so you'd actually be able to schedule it to get it done at that point in time?
Let's see, this is March, April, we probably still, because you guys are still, you're still in your budget. I think that'd still give us enough time out, like that. And that's just it, we, schedule it how it is and work out that with you guys.
The main thing I'm getting at there is, if they need to think about it longer or whatever, just trying to figure out if they would have enough time to wait until the April meeting, and then if they decide to move forward, still have enough time to get it done
Because
before the
even
next school year.
May would be, because, this is March, April, May, 2 more board meetings or something like that. Because you technically is May, towards the end of May, your last days of school, then, so. And that's the other thing, I don't know how much waxing you do, but if you're gonna wax your gyms or something, maybe that's an area we tackle first or something, so that way, then we are not going in over that new waxed floor and stuff like that. Even though we put plywood down with our lift and stuff like that, it'd be nice to actually get in there before they strip all that wax. And I don't know, is there a lot of carpet? Do you do carpet cleaning or?
This end of the building, basically all the hallways are carpet.
And then I think over the other side is tile.
Yep.
So there again, if they do some waxing, let's coordinate so that we can get in there and not make a mess after they've actually cleaned up the room and then say, no, because you're gonna get something when you take a light out of the ceiling, you're gonna get something falling down. And typically we just leave the light all together, take the whole thing, disconnect it on the top side, take the whole thing out, put the new flat panel in its place, plug it in, and move on to the next one. Usually takes them about 10-15 minutes per light to do.
Now, with these units, once they go bad, you have to replace the entire unit. It's not like a situation where you just replace the light bulb.
That's a society we're in, it's a throwaway. They
Then-
carry a 5-year warranty.
So, reported life, 60,000 hours. If you look at, let's say 10 years, if they were left on continuously, that's 87,000 hours. So a lot of these lights are left on all day, all night. You're not gonna get 10 years out of the unit before it goes bad.
Those are just projections because they haven't been out long enough to determine how many hours, but yes, that's true. I mean, if they were left on for 24 hours, 7 days a week for the next, 10 years.
Right, so yeah, then, looks at the savings over 10 years, you're basically saving that amount of money in electricity to pay for the unit, but you're still having to probably replace the unit every 10 years. So it's kind of a wash on that end.
Yeah, because right now they carry a 5-year warranty, so if it goes out in year 4.5, you get a new one, you get a new fixture in that place, and so then your 5 years starts over on that fixture. They're all dated, they all have dating.
I guess my big concern, I know when the LED lights initially came out, like we'll just call them first gen LED light bulbs, 10 years on the box, I'd be lucky to get 1 or 2 a lot of the times. And some of them I still have that are still going. So 50% fail rate. These are pretty relatively new, I'd consider them first gen, these LED panels. So we could have the same kind of issue there where, yeah, they're saying 60,000 hours, but we don't know because they haven't been out that long.
But here's the one thing that is a little bit different. So like if you were buying some from a big box store, you're getting the ones that don't make the qualifications of the other, these are lab tested, and so each one has basically not each one, but the style, and so they have what they call DLC, it's the Design Light Consortium rating, and so they put them through rigorous ratings, and once they make that, that's when they determine their hours. But if they don't make it, they get, that bunch gets thrown out. A lot of times we see the big box stores buy those up and sell them, and that's why you have so many failures, is because they don't meet the hours and regulations, they don't meet colors, something happens, so.
So now price wise, have those gone down in price
Oh, yes.
over the last?
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that in the next 5 years, they're gonna go down in price even more?
But they have went up in price. They came down in price when they were 3-4 years ago, but this year, because of everything, they have gone back up in price, but because we buy such a huge volume from this vendor, they haven't raised our price, but they have went back up like $3-4 a pamp type of deal. So they have went back up, but they used to be close to probably $100, where now they're closer to $65 type deal, so.
Sure. Now, as far as when those were to start going out, let's just say in 10 years, do you guys have a service team that comes and replaces 2, 4, 10 at a time? Or is it just, you guys come in and just do complete installations on buildings?
That's a good question, because I would assume that we'd have to come and reevaluate their building and get with the manufacturer and say, what are we gonna do if we're starting to get all these failures and stuff like that. At this point in time, we haven't had that, so I can't really tell you what we would do.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm just thinking in 10 years, you have a teacher whose light goes out above her desk.
Yeah.
I can't call the janitor and have him come put it in a unit.
Yeah.
It's pretty simplistic now with the light bulbs, so that's something to think about. Yeah, we wouldn't have to worry about it for a little bit, but down the road, it'd be an issue.
In regards to those light bulbs, like, I have lights at home in my shop that have those long bulbs, and now they've come out with LED bulbs that you can just take out the old, you maybe have to change a wire or two, but then you can use those. Is that something that you guys do? Because you mentioned the library, that you would put bulbs in there instead.
Yes. Actually, we went over that. Putting bulbs in some area, you know, like if we did, you could bulb, but it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid over it. It's kind of like it's working, but it's not 100% because it runs off of the existing, it can run off the existing ballast, which works, but then once the ballast goes out, and then you gotta put the bulbs, you're almost at a price of a new panel. So we did look at that, at the option of just bulbing everything too. I mean, that is an option, we can do that, that's an option, but this is right now what we we looked at. I mean, if you wanna see numbers that way, I could get those for you, I mean, pretty easy, so.
Okay.
So, but that it's putting a band, it's kind of putting a band, it's not really doing 100%. I mean, it's not really getting, and sometimes you might sacrifice some light because of that bulb and stuff like that, so.
Ryan, you can maybe help me out with this. What's the average lifespan of a ballast for a light like this?
I don't know what the hour rating is on the ballast, I guess, but
On the T8
on the
ballast.
T8s.
10 years, if you're.
Yeah, I'd say you're right in that same ballpark. So-
Well, these were all replaced in 2010.
These were replaced in 2010, so we're
Yeah,
at 11
we-
years now.
We built the new school in 2009, and then the whole refurb where they redid all the lighting over here was 2010.
I mean, if they're gonna have to get replaced,
I was gonna say 50,000 hours, it's right in there, 50,000, 60,000.
so yeah, if we're at the end of the life of these units too, that's also something to take into consideration. Because of ballast, I don't know, are they still 110 bucks roughly,
No.
or am I way off?
No, they're not that expensive for these, 30-ish, somewhere in there. You can bypass ballast, and put LED bulb in.
Gotcha.
Like you said, that's not.
You're a local lighting expert, Ryan. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, their LED is great, it'll save you a lot of money in the long run, like he said, so it's, I mean, it's well worth switching to an LED whether you're going to do bulbs or you're going to do new lights. I mean, like Slade said, it's, you know, if that goes out, you're looking at replacing the whole thing. Which, you know, I get called all the time to come and replace ballasts in here, so.
You can replace these if they were to go out too? Is that, like, if we just needed one or two and we don't need a whole wing, you guys can do those no problem?
And these actually don't have a bulb in it, that's the other thing, these basically have a diode of tape, and so really there's not a bulb in there. The only thing that really replacing this is right here, would be the driver, which is very similar to a ballast, but it just seems like the manufacturers are more apt to just say, you know what, instead of troubleshooting this, let's just give you a new flat panel.
Every time I've ever run into one, they're like, nope, just take the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was, I think there was a total of 4 of these that got emailed out, and then the page 3 and 4 had like a payback of 2 years. What was that looking at?
That was
just
the other
bulbs?
term in which the labor was not included in that.
Oh, that sounds way better.
Oh, okay.
I didn't
Free labor?
I have those here if you wanna look at them.
One other
With that
thing,
plan.
One other thing
Well-
that Ken brought up too, I would mention that we haven't talked about is every summer the custodians come into each one of these rooms, drop the whatever that plastic thing's called, and dust in each light. And you're talking hundreds of hours of custodian time every summer. Or if you put in those panels, they're sealed and they don't have to do a thing with them.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of cost savings just in labor too, which, just for the sake of our custodians, I kind of like too, so.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Yeah, go
well,
for it.
Or do you have the option of changing the Kelvin to a 345?
Yeah, those are 4,000s. And
Right, but I mean, some of them come with, you can go 345 right on the light, like your brightness.
Yep, yep.
Can you do that? You have a option with this light right here?
This one, no, but we could order them with both options on there. But then you do start getting to be a little bit more in price wise. You can order, so that's why, I mean, most of these are 4,000s. So, do you want to, we could look at 3,500 this room, 4,000 this room,
You're getting,
yeah.
What supplier is these lights coming from? What
I-
supply house do you use?
I use one I use Border States and Sioux Falls. Yep.
So what would be the total contract amount if the district,
It's 101,000.
so I'm gonna ask this question because I'm in the industry and I appreciate your presentation, I know you put a lot of thought into it, but what benefit would the district have to go directly to GNR versus working with an architect they're already working on some projects with, putting together some brief bid specs and throwing on the bid market?
Probably cost.
Because the bid market is very competitive right now, and I'm saying that my point is the district probably saves money if they put this out to bid, and if it is 101,000,
Don't we
they
have
to
to?
bid anyway.
Right?
Not technically, so if we did the elementary and the high school, you wouldn't have to do it because
If
it's
we,
You'd
only
have
if
to
we
write-
split it, we would.
You'd have to write two separate contracts.
Right.
They could, I mean, it's possible, that we're open for competition. I just buy a very good price set from.
I don't
supplies.
disagree with that, but we
Yeah.
got obviously a local electrician and many in the region that would probably appreciate the opportunity to bid on a project.
And we'd be more than happy to team with, this is just through GNR, if they, like what you brought up about the 2-point, if you bought the materials from us, and then we, used a local guy to
Okay,
install,
that's what
we,
that's-
we can do that, too, but this is just a turnkey through GNR and things like that, so.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's why when we first brought, I brought labor, no labor, bulbs, no bulb, things like that, so.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of avenues and facets we can go down and things like that, and I will do whatever the school district would like us to do, so.
No, I think tonight you really got the ball rolling, and Doug, you have a great point that, we need to maybe think about this and how we can get the savings.
And unfortunately, you're in an area that has no rebates.
Do you see that coming in the future?
Not with the utility company you have. I've worked with all of them, and I've worked with your utility company, and they don't sound like they have any desire to do that in South Dakota. They have it in Minnesota, but not in South Dakota.
Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you.
These are very light too.
Yeah.
But you probably know that, right?
It's been pretty quiet down on the elementary end.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks, sir. You know where you're going to get up?
Yep. Okay. Talk to you later.
March 31st and 1st, we have our birth to 3, our dial screening for kindergarten next year and kindergarten roundup. I think right now, we're up in the 20s right now as far as the amount of kids that we're gonna screen, and that number's climbing every day, so. I don't quite know where our kindergarten class will be next year, but I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna be in the 20s again. That's kind of been our standard number. Elementary choir, or honor choir is gonna be the 29th in Brookings. On the back, I've actually got the kids listed. There were 700 kids that tried out in South Dakota, 125 kids were picked. And Freeman has 16 kids that were picked, and I think Sonia told me that's probably a record number of kids picked from Freeman. I don't think we've ever had a number that high. So I have the 4th grade, the 5th grade, and the 6th graders listed on the back page of the kids that actually got chosen. So when they go to Brookings on the 29th, because of COVID, normally they would practice, do one big concert. I believe they're splitting them into groups to make the groups a little bit smaller, a little bit safer, so, but they are still gonna be able to have a concert up there, it sounds like. Elementary Science Fair is gonna be on March 10th. We haven't had a science fair for quite a few years. When Katie was here, we did the Science Day, so the science fair is back. They're gonna have a parent viewing, so the kids will set their stuff up in the gym so the parents can come in the evening and view all the science fair projects. The kids, I don't think, are planning to be there unless they come with mom and dad, but they will have them set up in the evening so all the parents can come in and see what the kids did. Our elementary parent-teacher conferences were on February 10th and 11th, and we had about an 87% turnout rate, which is down a little bit, but still a pretty solid number for parents that turned out for parent-teacher conferences. And then tomorrow, this forecast is for, our rule at the elementary is kids can't wear shorts till April 1st, and that was something the teachers kind of put into place into our handbook. But tomorrow, I think the forecast, I looked on my phone coming over, is 78 degrees, so we're gonna have a hate winter day tomorrow, and all the elementary kids get to wear shorts, and they were pretty excited about that. So if your kid came home and said they can wear shorts tomorrow, it is actually good.
Questions?
Thanks, Shane.
Kevin?
All right, on the old COVID front, basically the only thing I have there is, after Wednesday of this week, all of our staff members in the building that, provided their name to me saying that they wanted to get a vaccination, should be able to do so either between the hospital over here or our Heritage Pharmacy, because they got a bunch of vaccines that are coming in, or came in this week already. And then, as far as federal money for the COVID stuff, we should have some of that, the most recent round of money. I think they said applications for that are supposed to open up this week, I believe, if I remember correctly. I think that was at one of my superintendent meetings about that. So that's the, I believe it's a little over $300,000 we'll get with that particular round. We're estimating if, when Biden's relief bill that's out in Washington right now, if that, goes through and gets finalized and all that stuff, you can take that 320,000 you got this time around times 1.6, and that would probably be pretty close to what we get coming in the next time around. So probably close to $500,000 on top of that coming in. So there's quite a bit of money as a result of some of that stuff that should be circulating in here sometime over the next year or so. We are hosting another postseason basketball game tomorrow. Thank you to Mrs. Sage for throwing our name in the hat with the state. Vibrant Hurley and Corsica Stickney will be playing here tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. On the capital projects front, a couple things. One, Christy and I got a hold of Daktronics. We need to do something with the scoreboard out at the football field. So they came, was it last Tuesday? And we kind of looked at a couple different things. And while they were doing that, we told them to go ahead and throw a quote at us for putting some stat boards in the actual gym here, and potentially maybe even a video board. They actually have a kind of a marketing plan or program that goes with it, where they kind of help you with the sponsors and different things. So the whole idea is that it can kind of essentially pay for itself after a certain amount of time. So don't know what those numbers are going to look like, but those hopefully should be back sometime before the next meeting. Some representatives from Co-op Architecture came also last Tuesday. When we did some of that strategic planning stuff last time around, one of the things that came up was adding some skylights over in that kind of center of the middle school, high school building above the library and some of those interior classrooms. So they're gonna look at putting together some specs on that. And then I guess the bigger thing we looked at is Mr. Seiler and I kind of walked through over there, east of the elementary gym to get an idea of what a potential wrestling addition could look like over there. You know, I don't know if you have anything you want to throw in the mix there. Basically, the guy said, based on what Mr. Seiler kind of had as an idea for how big that area over there was probably about perfect for what we were trying to do. He actually asked us if we had purposely left that much room there specifically for that reason. I don't know if that was actually the case or not, but, you know, it sounds like, you know, that went well. So, you know, our hope is they'll get us kind of something to work with a little bit prior to the April meeting, so we can take a look at that. As far as, you know, if you decide you want to do that, what did we talk about? Best case scenario, we said by the time we get it done,
End of the year.
best bet would be maybe wait till August to put out bids, just based on their opinion, saying that with everybody being as busy as they are in June and July, you're probably better off waiting till August. And hopefully maybe by the end of the calendar year, you'd be able to have that done. If not, they were thinking what, early, you know, January, February, you know, maybe somewhere in there. You know, I don't know, maybe Doug can shed some light on that too. You know, his best guess was, what'd he say, $500,000?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, 500,000. You know, he said that could go either way depending on obviously what the bids look like coming back, but I don't know. Like I said, it's preliminary in nature right now, but I mean, it sounded, obviously, anytime you're gonna add something brand new, sounds pretty positive, but you'll have to get down to the, you know, the nitty gritty of what all that stuff could potentially look like, so. Other stuff, I did have Randy Kerner put together kind of a quote, you know, I guess kind of similar to what Ken did with the lights, for that bus lane over there. I had him do some other quotes, but I just don't know that we're gonna have the money to do some of that stuff. The big question, I suppose we'd have to answer would be that, you know, that bus lane, if anybody's driven down, that is in pretty rough shape. If we were to have Randy do it, the whole idea, we would probably do it in 2 phases so we could kind of bypass the bid process. You know, but you'd be looking at $90,000+ each year for the next 2 years to get that taken care of. So, you know, that would be an option to go with. You know, him and Canodal would be the ones that would be kind of doing the work there together over the course of the next 2 years. You know, your other option would be if you want to just do the whole thing all at once, then you would have to go down, you know, go through the bid process and do all that stuff. So more than likely, you'd probably have it'd probably be a little tough to get that done this summer. So, you know, I don't know what your thoughts are on that to begin with anyway. You know, I had him look at some stuff over at the elementary parking lot, but I think when it's all said and done, I think you're better off if you're gonna do that one, because that one's gonna be pretty expensive, to just wait a couple years and maybe just do it all at once instead of trying to do that one a little bit here and a little bit there. So, like I said.
Cause we bid that one got bid out, and that's part of the reason we.
Well, the bus lane, that one got bid out, and I think that's part of the reason why they're in the boat that they're in right now, because I don't think and obviously I wasn't here when they did that, but I think they had some issues with some of the prep work, and that's kind of why it looks the way that it does right now.
I know I've talked to some folks at the daycare, they say it's kind of narrow, that when people come up and the buses are going around, I don't know if there's possibilities to widen that area a little bit too.
There could be. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I have some information there from Randy as far as if you want to do something or not. So, the only other thing I have is we did our principal interviews on Thursday of last week. There were 15 applications for the position. After we did our screening and our reference checks and all that stuff, we narrowed it down to 4. All 4 of them showed up last Thursday. And So the process kind of looked like this. There were 3 interview panels they went through, and then we had a tour. So all 4 of them were just kind of rotating through those stations. There was an interview panel that included some administrators and a couple board members. There was a group that included staff members, both certified and classified. And then there was a student panel, which was kind of overseen by our student council advisor. Basically what she did is she took, I think, 2 class officers from each grade, 6 through 11, and then they were the ones that were kind of facilitating that process there. So when we got done, what we did is Ms. Crack kind of came on part of the student group. There was a staff representative that came from that group. They met with the admin board group, and each group was kind of told to rate their candidates 1 through 4. And basically, when we got done with that, the consensus from all the panels was to recommend Katie Youngke for the position like we had listed on there. So that's kind of how we arrived at that particular spot. Other than that, I'm gonna go back here, a step back to that bus lane thing. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on that as far as what you want to do?
You got some information?
So basically, the information I have is that, like I said, it would be about, I think the total project, if you include both years together, would be like $198,000. So basically, you'd split that in half each year. If you were gonna go that route, otherwise, like I said, you could certainly go get bids to see if you could get it done for cheaper from somewhere else.
I would say we bid it out. I just have one comment. Since you guys had problems in the past with the prep work, it'd be very cheap insurance for the district to hire a testing agency. So no matter who does the work, that doesn't have to be part of the actual work of the contract, so it won't mess with your contract amounts if you decide to do it over 2 years. But it is insulation for the district to make sure whatever contract does the work does it. They may find some bad subgrade there, if it's corrected. They would test the concrete, so if there's ever an issue, you're not dealing with this again down the road, that you've got that data. And there's several that compete within the area. Co-op would be able to help you out hiring on those too.
So they test it as the process is going?
They would test compaction on the subgrade
Okay.
and on the gravel, and then they would pull cylinders from the concrete and break it to make sure it breaks.
To do pre-samples,
Okay.
subsoil.
Yep. That way, if there was a problem, you can go back to the testing agency, look at the reports, and then they'd deal with the contractor.
If there's a waterway that ran through there,
Yeah.
dirt just got put in.
Okay.
Put in, if it wasn't deep enough, then obviously that's where all the setting is coming from, so.
So then what was, if things would go bad, would they be bonded in a way where what happens
if the
after that?
contractor poured on top of a subgrade that failed the compaction test, then it's his responsibility to tear it out, redo it at his cost.
Okay.
Which I'm assuming is probably what happened the first time around. They just didn't do it, because I think that
Well,
what's underneath over there is crap.
That's saturated. The ground isn't that.
If you're gonna have a big building project on that side though, would it be better to wait until after the big building project's done before you're gonna have curbs getting wrecked and all kinds of stuff. I mean, if we're gonna put all that money
Loaders, excavators.
into a new addition,
Okay.
why not wait to do the road until that's done? That way you're not beating that up during the entire process.
Makes sense.
Yep, makes sense. More than likely, they would require a silver report for your foundational addition, so you're gonna have all that data before you start the bus lane anyway, so then you're not paying for it twice either.
So we, consensus there, just hold off and wait.
I think so.
Okay. That's fine. I'll just let them know.
I would say unless the addition is a no, then we can go ahead with the road, but if the addition's a yes, then I think we should hold on.
The only last thing that I have, and I don't know if this is necessarily a principal superintendent report thing or whatnot. I talked to Kyle yesterday afternoon and informed him that I will be submitting my resignation this evening. I sent a message to the staff earlier today to inform them of that, so they didn't get surprised by anything this afternoon. I will tell you that I was pretty humbled by the feedback that I got from the staff throughout the day, whether it was people coming and talking to me or, sending an email just, little bit disappointed, thanking me, so on and so forth. So for those of them that are actually watching, I do appreciate that. It's hard to replace a feeling appreciated, so that was nice to see. So, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later here before we get going. So other than that, that's what I got.
Questions for Kevin? All right, thanks, Kevin. Then we're gonna need a motion to approve the ground rules for the 2021 teacher negotiations.
So those would be the same ground rules that we've had for the past however many years. Basically, they just dictate. The main thing in there is basically just the board as a whole goes into the negotiation process, and the teachers association group can be represented by up to 5 members if they want to. Other than that, Debbie and I are just there more or less to serve as resources during the process. We'll have to get some more information over the next couple of weeks. It sounds like they're still pushing that 2.4% increase out in Pier. I haven't heard much in terms of opposition to that from anything, so that would be a good thing for us, obviously, in the long run. So we just need a motion to approve that, and then, you know, the next item would be to set our dates, which, you know, are typically pretty consistent each year, but we can talk about that after we approve the rules.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve our ground rules for the teacher negotiations?
So moved.
Motion by Corey,
Second.
second by Slade. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, the dates for the teacher
So
negotiation.
typically what we do, or we have done in the past, our next meeting is April 12th, which is a Monday. More times than not, we negotiate the Wednesday prior, so April 7th. So we go April 7th, or the Wednesday before, and then if for some reason or another we can't get finished up in one night, we usually meet like an hour before the Monday, you know, that board meeting to try to get everything hashed out. So I don't know how, if everybody's still okay with doing that, or if you'd like to do something a little bit different.
I'm fine with it.
I think it would probably work for me.
What time do you wanna meet that night? Do you wanna wait till 7, or do you wanna go a little bit earlier?
I think we did, what did we do, 6 last year?
Yeah, I think, cause usually if we meet before the board meeting the following week, we go at 6 for that, so.
Makes me no difference.
6 is fine.
6 o'clock? Okay, so Wednesday, April 7th at 6. And then Monday, the 12th, at 6 if needed.
All right, then you got the calendar for 21,
Yep,
22.
and really, the only thing we were waiting on last time around was the state still hadn't released their football schedules yet, so I was not able to put homecoming in there. Homecoming will be a little bit later next year, just based on how everything pans out. So, all that we did is, actually on October 1st there, that went from a Flyer Friday just to that Homecoming Friday instead. So everything else is exactly the same as we had. Yeah. Last time.
Anybody got any questions?
What's the status in the Turner County Fair?
Generally like that 17th through the 20th.
I did not bring that up. I did have one parent call me, because I know they were saying that they were supposed to try and come get a hold of their school boards to push it off. But I think last year we were gonna, what, do we decide we were just gonna?
So last year, what we decided was we were gonna leave it alone, because we get a little imbalanced with days first semester versus days second semester. So we just said, kids that would be, you know, a part of that would be excused those days. I think the other thing we initially talked about when they didn't really end up doing it was, we talked about, so the first day of school would be Wednesday the 18th, we dismiss at 1 that day. I think last year we actually had an early dismissal for 1 o'clock on the 19th plan, just because of that. But we said that if kids were participating, you know, as far as 4-H or stuff like that, we would just excuse them from school anyway, so.
The 18th is probably half day?
Dismiss at 1.
Okay. I guess if there was interest in moving it back, I see there's 2 Flyer Fridays in September, 2 in November, and 2 in December. And that might be a possible way to move it back, but if it's not that big of a deal with
But
letting
the
kids
problem
go.
with that is Flyer Fridays still count as days. So if you bump those back into the second semester, that's where you end up getting your imbalance on days.
Okay.
So that's why we try to keep that start date that 3rd week of August if we can.
Guess that answers the question.
Yeah, I guess as far as I'm concerned, if they were willing to let them out of school, that's fine
Yeah.
enough. I mean, I don't think we need to adjust their own schedule, but that's my opinion.
What's your thoughts, Corey? Well, I know my wife would be happy with it. That's just, that's, you know, because she's in charge of Turner County 4-H. But, you know, as long as the kids are dismissed from school, I guess I don't have a problem with it, you know.
She actually called me last year and we talked about that for quite a while. And that was kind of what I told her, same thing, so we don't, you know, I think there's a lot of people that were under the impression that if we started there, that kids were gonna be penalized for not being here those days.
And last year, things got handled a lot differently, obviously, because you had, you didn't have a fair. And secondly, all the livestock shows were held individually on certain days. So, you know, the kids were maybe only gone for maybe a day, maybe on a Tuesday, and then maybe again on a Friday. They weren't gone the whole week. You know, so, like I said, I guess, you know, knowing that we're having to work with the semester days, I guess we're kind of up against the wall anyway. We're just gonna have to do it, and as long as the kids aren't getting penalized, that's all that matters.
Anybody else have any questions, comments on anything? So we're all in agreement, we can make a motion here. So we need a motion to approve the 21-22 school year calendar.
So,
Motion by Cody. We have a second.
second.
Second by Corey.
You get in trouble.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carried.
Before we jump into that one, do you wanna do this associated school board one?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So there's 2 spots, and this is one of those typical deals where honestly, I don't know a whole lot about these people involved. There's 2, associated school boards, board of directors positions, or excuse me, there's 1 position open, there's 2 people that are, basically running for that. And this is for schools, they're representing schools that have enrollment between 700 and 1,399. There's a gentleman from Madison, and there is a lady from Vermillion. Really, I mean, you can look at these if you want, their little profiles. The only real difference that stood out to me is the gentleman from Madison has been on the school board for 10 years, and this other lady has only been on school board for 1 year. So, I don't know if you want to pass it around and look at it. But basically, you just need to approve a motion to approve either Tom from Madison or Carol from Vermillion. Like I said, I didn't get that in the mail till today, so I apologize for not getting it out sooner.
I think if I remember right, when we voted last year, we voted on who was from a smaller school. I think it's kind of how we came down to that a little bit. Well,
Somebody needs us.
No, I don't.
Or you can just flip a coin.
That's,
I found the
I
pertinent
just
information I
said
needed
go
on there,
with
so.
the person with the most experience and so.
I would probably do
No, I'll tell you later.
that.
Can I be looped in on that too?
You can.
Thank you.
Is everybody okay just doing the school board experience? Or do you want to?
That would be Tom.
There's no way I've been over being 1 year in school.
ASBSD experience, that would be Tom too.
Okay.
Educational, they're pretty similar. So if you're looking at experience, it's Tom.
Is everybody okay with that?
Tom was my pick.
Okay, so then we have a motion to nominate Tom.
So moved.
Second. You can have it.
Sorry, who,
I motion.
you motion, and then I'll give it to Slade. He beat you by nose. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, then we're gonna have a discussion regarding the sports cooperative for the 21-22 school year.
All right, so, last Thursday, well, let me go back and further than that. So, I talked with Nathan Epp over at Freeman Academy, and then there's an interim superintendent at Marion right now. His name's Mark Froke, he used to be in Vermillion. And I talked with both of them, and we kind of thought the best course of action moving forward was, before we start getting a bunch of people into a room to talk about some of the stuff, is actually put together kind of a draft proposal, so there was actually something to talk about before we got too carried away with stuff. So I wrote up a proposal, and then last Thursday, Christy and I, Mark from Marion and their AD, and then Nathan have met over at Freeman Academy, and we just kind of put it all out on the table and said, how does everybody feel about this, where are they at, so on and so forth. So in the agreements that you have right now, obviously you can see that what we have now is a little bit different than what we went in with on Thursday of last week. So anything that is new and has been added is listed in red. Everything that was previously there that we decided to change has been struck through, so at least you have an idea of where we started and where we ended up coming out of that particular meeting. So, obviously, and you can kind of jump in here too, the big topics of conversation with that were what you would imagine they would be. How are we gonna split this thing? Are we gonna split it even across the board? And the big thing was, who's gonna get to host, the games when it comes to volleyball and boys and girls basketball. So we kind of went in maybe asking for a little bit more. Originally, we kind of had an idea of a 60-30-10 split, Freeman, Marion, Freeman Academy. We walked out of there with a 50-30-20 split. And basically, essentially what that means, or as close as we can, is when it comes to games in those three sports, Freeman Academy would get 2, Marion would get 3, and Freeman would get all the rest, as far as home games are concerned. So, I will tell you guys, and I know I kind of talked with Kyle about this a little bit, in speaking with Marion and Marion School Board, they're fully, they like exactly what's listed on there as far as what they're getting out of the deal. They don't feel like they deserve any more than that. They're very happy with that. As far as the other side of it goes, you guys have all the bargaining power in the world, so if you don't like the way the rest of it looks, you can go whatever direction you want. So, Marion made that very clear to us when we went over there and met. So, if you're happy with the way it looks, great. If you think, you deserve more games than that or something like that, like I said, you kind of hold the cards there. So, I don't know what your initial thoughts are in looking through some of that stuff, one way or the other.
How did we end up on a 4-year?
Well, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be 4 years. When we talked and met the other day, we just said something more than 2 probably made sense because you're probably not gonna know until the end of 2 years how things are really actually going anyway. I guess if you're gonna do something other than 4, I would probably suggest doing 3, because then that actually matches the state cycle right now, because they're on a weird 1-year rotation this year, because they wanna align with the other states. So they'll redo all the, and I guess that's more for football, but alignments and things like that. So they'll redo the alignments after next year, and then you'll have a 2-year period before they'll redo the alignments again. If that makes sense to you. So, 3 would, maybe would even make more sense than 4. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. I mean, if you do 2, or if you do 3, if you do 4, whatever, I mean, I just think you gotta, if you're gonna do this, and if the momentum is moving towards the direction of doing it, I think you really gotta give it a chance to actually work. And I just don't know that 2 years or anything less than that is gonna give you the, because if you're gonna go, more than likely, even if you would say you're only gonna do a 2, you're probably gonna have to know relatively quick after the first year whether you're not going to do anything after that, just for the sake of, giving everybody time to figure out what they're gonna do if it's not gonna actually work.
We're in that co-op agreement where we adopted the Freeman schedule.
Yes, our conference affiliation and our schedule would be used for the first year of the co-op.
So if we entered into the 3-year contract, we would be then in it for 3, as opposed to if we
Well,
just went
it's-
into it, you could still get.
So here's the deal on that. So there's, if you look, and I didn't copy for myself.
Now-
If you go to that very last page, doesn't it say something about if you want to get out of it, you have to provide notice to the other schools by, is it the end of the 3rd year? Or is that not?
I didn't see that.
I don't see on the last.
I thought I remembered seeing it somewhere, but I don't.
Notification of termination of the cooperative needs to be made by January of the 3rd contractual year. So the state views co-ops in this manner. So if it's a football co-op, I think you're in for 4 years no matter what. I think they changed that a couple years ago. But for all other sports, the state itself, so the Activities Association, views a co-op as a co-op until they receive paperwork saying otherwise. So like for wrestling and for football, there's no clause in the actual agreement that says somebody has to be notified at such and such a time. That's just mostly a courtesy to the other schools, so they know, A, we're gonna be in it for this long, and B, if somebody's planning on getting out of it, we're gonna know by such and such date, so we can start making plans for what's gonna happen moving forward. You wouldn't have to have that in there if you didn't want to. Like, so say, for example, you'd rather do a 3-year than a 2-year. Logic would tell you based on this, then you would say by January of the 2nd contractual year to give them a year to, make arrangements or whatever the case would be. As far as the state is concerned, they don't care what you put in here. You could just say we have a co-op agreement, and after the first year, if you fill out paperwork to dissolve the co-op, you send it to the state, then as far as the state's concerned, you're done. Like I said, if you think that this is something that you want to do, I don't know that doing something like that is fair to the process. Just leaving it open to be able to throw in the towel after 1 year. I mean, I don't know that that's probably a fair evaluation period of what's going on.
Right.
Page 7, guideline 1. Student must maintain a weekly grade point average of 3.0 on a 4.0 grading scale and have no Fs. The no Fs thing,
Can I, not to interrupt you.
I didn't give you the full question.
I know where you're
Go ahead.
going, I know where you're going. So we did talk about the eligibility criteria that's in here. That is not set in stone because, as you probably noticed, it doesn't actually mesh with what we're doing right now. The reason, I just threw something in there, we talked about the other day that whatever we decide to do, if we're gonna do this, the eligibility requirements need to be the same for all 3 schools involved, because it creates way too many issues. If this school is doing it on a 2-week basis, this week's doing it on a 1-week basis, this school says you can have 1 F, this one says you have to be passing everything. So part of the reason I put that in there is because both Freeman Academy and Marion have stricter eligibility requirements than we do. I think basically they say you can't be failing a class at all, and then Freeman Academy checks on a weekly basis. Marion, I think, was 2 weeks, but they talked, we talked about the whole idea of everybody shifting to a weekly
And
period.
even what day it happens and.
Right. So there would still have to be some kinks worked on that, because that would probably actually come down to a matter of the board changing that policy, you know what I mean? No. So I was just I threw something in there to put it in there, but the one thing that we all agreed on when we met was that all 3 schools should have the same thing. Now, if you would.
Well, the no Fs thing, that's great. I don't know if 3.0
This
is,
is a 3.0, is that for everybody, or is that,
mean, is it
was that
three?
only for like 8th graders participating or something like that?
That's the dual, it looks like
That
that's
was
under dual.
sport.
Dual
Like,
sport.
you're gonna try to do 2 sports at once.
And again, that.
So if you're gonna run track and you're gonna golf.
Exactly.
And the whole idea there, and that's probably the only real, maybe volleyball and cross country.
Yeah.
But
would be the other.
golf and track gets kind of tricky because there's a lot of, they miss a lot of school if they're gonna do that stuff. So that's where I think that's the idea with that. And like I said, that doesn't have to be,
Yeah, it might be simpler to have everybody at the same.
Yeah.
Then I think point 3, right above the dual sport participation, then it seems like there's an 8th grade thing too with the 3.0. Before any student moves from 8th grade to junior varsity athletics, the student's grades must be checked to ensure a 3.0. So then there's one other place there too.
so the whole idea, and the whole idea of that too is, we were thinking about, well, let's go back here a second. The first thing we said about like middle school and junior high stuff was, if all 3 of us are gonna go together, your junior high stuff is probably gonna have to be limited to 7th and 8th grade. Now, they all run 5th and 6th programs through the school, Freeman Academy and Marion do. So, we'd probably have to think pretty hard about whether we'd wanna do that and continue that amongst all 3 schools at 5th and 6th grade, and then have the junior high stuff be 7th and 8th, because otherwise, we have enough kids here right now to run a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade basketball. That's not really where our numbers issue is, but, if you're gonna put all those 3 schools together, then it would probably make more sense to do 5th and 6th separate from 7th and 8th, and then have your high school stuff like that. Because they said they were interested in continuing 5th and 6th the way that they do it.
Yeah, they're going to.
The school hires their
School
coaches.
umbrella.
I think the ADs are the ones that schedule the games for the 5th and 6th grade teams. Is that how they do it, Austin? So.
So
I
they
think
do
that-
5th and 6th separate? Or do you guys do it together?
5th and 6th, Freeman Academy and Marion are together for 5th and 6th grade.
Okay. So then there's a proposal for us to be a part of that or not at all?
Well, what we said, it's not necessarily written in here, but that's probably what we'd have to do with the number of kids we're gonna get is 5th and 6th grade would now become part of the school, and we'd still be a part of the cooperative with Freeman Academy and Marion. And the 5th and 6th grade stuff would be coached by coaches from the school or paid by the school. And it would be scheduled by the athletic directors, and then 7th and 8th grade would essentially run the way it runs right now, we just wouldn't have 6th grade included in that. We'd schedule the games, we'd do all that stuff. It would be a joint thing between all 3 schools, just like everything else. And then high school would be a separate thing. And some of that 8th grade stuff that's in there as far as 8th graders getting promoted to the high school, I think one of the idea, it's not to say that an 8th grader wouldn't still be able to play high school, but, the hope would be that your numbers are good enough where high school basketball would be high school basketball. So that's why there's some of those stipulations there about 8th graders moving up. So not to say that it couldn't happen, you just probably need to make sure that you have criteria in place for what constitutes them moving up. Ideally, out of this, you'd get for A games, B games, and C games would be the hope, so.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So, first of all, comment, Marion, actually, you can have a D, which I think is pretty strict, actually, eligibility, because some kids that's their best work in some classes, they work hard for that D. But with the eligibility thing, would that then carry over for the wrestling, since we're already part of that co-op? And this is, this co-op's for basketball, track, and those other things, but would wrestling then fall under the same criteria for eligibility?
I think it probably should, because I think, like we said, if all three of us are gonna do something similar, like we're gonna do the same thing, then that becomes a matter, the board has to approve that as policy, and I'm assuming their boards would have to approve whatever that is. So I think it only makes sense that, even though we're not together for, well, even though wrestling, we're kind of with the same schools on that, even though that's not actually part of this agreement, because we have a separate agreement, I think it would only make sense to do that. And I think it would, I guess in my mind, it would make sense to probably try to influence Marion to say, we get the whole no failing grade thing, but D's is maybe a little bit of a stretch on that. And I suppose that depends on how everybody else feels about it. That's just kind of my opinion on that.
Who and how are you going to measure the homeschool students' progress? That are gonna-
Well, here's the deal.
Those kids are gonna play sports, so.
So here's the deal. The Senate just passed a bill that there's no accountability for them anymore. Starting July 1st, they can play, and there's nothing that you can do to try to,
Did I read that, did I hear that right? They can go, like, we are no longer allowed to say they're not accepted, schools, public schools are no longer not allowed to accept them? Did I understand that right?
well, so, you know how last year we spent all that time putting together,
Yeah.
so that basically goes out the window. So we spent all the time doing that, if a homeschool kid, obviously if a kid is homeschooling and they wanna come to school for academic purposes, law says you have to let them in no matter what. The big debate was always with the participation in activities. That's why we spent all that time having those meetings to come up with a policy to do that. Now that policy is obsolete because it's been overtaken by state law. So the state law now says, and I'm summarizing here, that if a kid who homeschools and does all their stuff at home wants to come in to participate in basketball or football or whatever it is, you as a board don't have the authority anymore to dictate stipulations for what they have to do that. You just have to let them come play. And there's no oversight, really, in terms of the academic requirements that they have to meet in order to be able to do that. So, if that kind of answers your question. It was a real big topic of debate out in Pierre. The problem was that the governor was the one that pretty much proposed that bill or was part of that bill. And as much as, associated school boards and the school administrator group and all that tried to fight back and say, we're creating a lot of inequities because, well, what if a kid struggles with eligibility in school and all of a sudden they can just go home and say that they're gonna homeschool and really aren't held accountable for anything, but then can come back and participate. So that, the other thing to consider on that side is our school is gonna be put in a situation now where they have to adjust their own eligibility policies for fear of kids leaving just because they're too strict, so.
That's why I asked the question, because, like, when Chris said D's, you're gonna have some people who pull their kids out of school to play sports.
And it used to be, if your kid's enrolled in school, and then you decide that you're gonna take them out and homeschool, they couldn't participate in anything for a full year. That went away. I can't remember off the top of my head. I still think they might have to sit out for a short period of time, but it's not very long. So there's nothing on that side of things that's preventing kids from doing that very thing either. So, that's something that's probably gonna have to be considered along the way too. You're kind of getting backed into a corner a little bit on some of that stuff.
So Kevin, we're required to give them these opportunities. Is there any funding that comes with them for us providing that opportunity for them? None?
The only funding you get is if they'd actually attend school.
This is obviously a draft, but how would the filling of coaching positions work? Would it be an open application process? The two representatives from each board and the AD then decide who gets placed where at the head of each program, who's junior high, who's JV?
How did we talk about that the other day? I think it was ADs and
ADs and superintendents.
would interview the applicants
Yeah.
collectively,
Yeah.
and then they would make their recommendations to the board about, who would do what one way or the other.
So I'm just thinking if there's two board members on the committees, unless the full boards meet, somebody's gonna have to be the tiebreaker. Because you have 6 board members making that decision.
Well,
Or if you're gonna have a full board.
Wouldn't
vote,
necessarily be
that's
the-
different, but-
wouldn't necessarily be the co-op board that would be making that decision.
No.
It would be the actual board in which the
In your own school.
coaches.
Because that language in here kind of alludes to the fact that it's the co-op board that's making those decisions.
Cause I think the co-op boards, what is it, they meet 3 times a year?
We talked about how many times they meet, we said 3.
And I guess like, so the main thing tonight is, you know, obviously you're not approving anything right now, we just have to figure out if there's anything that you see in there specifically that you think needs to be changed or you're not okay with. And then Marion has their board meeting tonight, and then I think Freeman Academies is next week. So then we would get an idea after that, and there's probably gonna have to be some special meetings between now and April. I mean, the Activities Association knows we're working on this, so they're aware that, you know, the potential that would get done. What they need as of, well, technically, they don't even need this as of April. They just need us to fill out the canned paperwork on their website in terms of, you know, the 3 boards are okay with the cooperative in general. And then we can provide them the co-op agreement after the fact. I mean, they don't need to have all those details right now.
So we're still pretty early in the amendment process, a lot is getting changed.
Right,
Okay.
yep. And yeah, a lot of it can get changed.
Okay.
The main thing is sometime between now, depending on what the other boards come up with at their meetings, so on and so forth. The main thing is we'll have to figure out at some point in time before that Activity Association meeting, is it the first week of April, I think? You know, is whether we're actually all in, or we're in on the co-op or not. You know, we can work out the details later, and I think we got a pretty decent foundation for what that could look like right now. But we'll have to, because there's a board resolution that's involved in finalizing that. So all 3 boards would have to vote to be okay with it.
So my question for like a lot of the 5th and 6th, 7th, 8th grade teams, they're all relatively short seasons right now. So would there be like an extended season where they would last all through that traditional basketball season?
We did talk about that too.
We did.
We said, you know, right now, the junior high volleyball goes pretty close to the end of the high school volleyball season. I mean, it's, as far as the last regular season games. So, you know, would that get extended? Probably wouldn't have to. But basketball, we talked about, you know, if you're gonna have your separate 5th and 6th grade, you're gonna have your separate 7th and 8th grade, and there probably shouldn't, you know, hopefully if numbers go the way you want to, there shouldn't be a need for some of those kids to have to move up to fill out your JVs. That it's probably only makes sense that 7th and 8th grade at the very least, and 5th and 6th grade could too, would continue past Christmas, at least into, you know, January or something, to get more games. So, because I know our particular conference, we play all our junior high stuff before Christmas. But there's nothing to say that you couldn't continue on after Christmas, because I know like the old Tri-Valley and those schools that play in that, well, your guys' conference now, they play all their stuff after Christmas.
There's some schools that will play it before, but like the conference tournament is always in February, so most schools are still going through January, February.
So you would have the opportunity to extend those seasons. I think there was pretty good consensus amongst the people there that, you know, this is a good start, but whatever we decide to do, everybody's gonna have to be willing to work with each other, you know, to make this work. And I think everybody there was willing to do that. I don't know that there's gonna be a whole lot of real issues with some of that stuff. I think we can work through.
I'm assuming everybody's kind of sitting here for this reason. Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they had on any? Did you get to read over it? Did anybody else have any other questions?
Is this something that could be a link on the school's website so the public
It should,
chance to look at it?
well, it should be up there on the
It is
agenda.
on the board agenda.
Yeah.
It was in the agenda, that's where I found it, but.
No.
You're,
Yeah, well, you mean a separate link?
yeah, your average person probably isn't going to the meeting agenda, find that link embedded, you know? Because I had several people ask me, was it gonna be put on? And I think people do. generally look at the school's webpage pretty often because of the calendar and things on there, so.
No, I mean, that's easy enough to do. We just put something under current news and I'll link to it.
I hopped on and tried to find it quick, but I didn't spend too much time, but yeah, didn't know where to go or whatever, but yeah, it was right there.
I don't think I posted you know, he sends me an agenda ahead of time that doesn't have the documents until he gets them all finalized, so I might not have posted that till like yesterday even, so it was a little later than when the original agenda went up, but
I'd be interested in reading it.
I think the process will go much faster if everybody can get on there and look at it.
Well, I also,
Instead of speculating.
yeah, I also agree, I think it'd be nice, and maybe, I think I mentioned it to you, or we talked about it, but like trying to get the boards to get all together, especially if we're gonna try and get it done by April, like, to get a date set and try and, you know, instead of two people going, or you guys going and having to get a meeting to talk about it, we talk about what we talked about.
The only thing that worries me about that is you get 15 people in a room.
Well,
And that's why we kind of just try to go this route, and then we're trying to get,
I do think if, with this as a starting point, though, I think that makes that a lot easier, but instead of all the I'm sure there's 1, 2 on this board, and I'm sure on their boards, more farmers, like, as they start getting more and more busy, like, that's going to get harder and harder to try and find days, and if we're gonna try and do it in a month, which, just to try and set a day or two.
well, we'll see what they come back with after their meetings,
Okay.
to see what
When
they
you
have.
get to a certain point with this, will it be like kind of a public meeting, like, hey, everybody should come to this, and this is what we're gonna propose before it's all done? Or-
Yeah, I'm fine with that, I'm fine with that. The only problem is like, it's probably gonna be at that point, like, it's gonna be pretty much decided,
yeah.
and so like, opinions probably wouldn't matter as much if that, not saying that they don't, but
No, I get it.
saying that that's probably too late in the game.
Voicing your opinion right, as soon as you can in the next month to the board members would be a great thing, Call us, talk to us, email us, and tell us what you guys think, and hopefully Seth can get
Right,
something put up
yeah.
to look at this, and so everybody can get a good, definite look at it, and, there's little things we can tweak yet, and hopefully we can make a consensus between all schools, and we'll come together and have a good sports co-op.
I know there's a lot of questions floating around out there that everybody's asking kind of on the sides, and I don't think enough people come to the meeting to actually
Right.
find out. So, yeah.
I agree. That's one thing that I've really would like to see is, when we got together talking about Canastota football, just one sport, I think we had 2, maybe 3 meetings, Jeremy, if you remember. And it was one sport, and here we're dealing with 7 sports, and we haven't had any public input.
Right.
And then even before I left, my daughter said, how come no one's asked us kids? Isn't it our season? And so it kind of hit me. So I would really like to see something from the public to kind of say, hey, this is gonna affect you and your kids for the next however many years. What are your thoughts? So I like that, Ryan.
I guess I don't care if we can try and slip one in before.
It's up to you guys. Do you see anything in there right now?
Huh?
Do you guys see anything in there right now, major, that you feel absolutely has to be changed?
I think for me, if we're kind of dating in a sense, I think even Corey had mentioned the idea if we're trying out a consolidation, usually sports is the first few steps. I think that's a good point, that maybe less than 4 years might be better than it feels like we're trying it out, then after 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, that, okay, let's evaluate, everybody feel good, and then let's continue, or, I don't know, for me, I think probably what you guys were saying, 4 years might be a little long.
Yeah, I think 4 might be a little too long, 2 is obviously too short, I think 3 would be right where we would need to be, would be my opinion on it.
You said 3 lines up better with the.
Three's gonna.
Three lines up.
Three's gonna line up
Same.
better with the stuff, yeah. So I think we should do 3.
Yeah, I mean, The only thing that really jumped out at me was academic eligibility, and if that's still gonna be hashed out. That's what I have a little concern on, bringing this to the public when it's a very rough draft. There's gonna be a lot of knee-jerk reactions to things that aren't gonna make the final draft anyway. So, that's a concern. I'd like to have a meeting, once we have a finished product, present that to the community before we had a final vote.
So this is
That's
a
gonna
long
cost
ways
you a lot
along.
of trust with the community if you send a final draft out.
Yeah, I think,
Sorry, I missed that, Doug.
That'll cause a lot of trust issues with the community. If you publish something as a final draft and then say, here's your chance.
right, I
And
agree.
this is a question, as we look at consolidation, did Marion bring up what their football situation is? Like, how is this co-op gonna affect them if we consolidate? Do they have a solid enough agreement with what they're doing now that they're gonna be fine for those 3 years? Or if we consolidate, is their expectation then to play football, and then Canastota says, you got too many kids, we might not be in Class B, you guys are out here?
The way I understand theirs is Bridgewater Emory told them that they were in, cause they were gonna have committed time to them, they were in until, consolidation would happen, right?
That's where I'm at on that too. So they're taking Marion and Freeman Academy for Bridgewater Emory is for, Bridgewater Emory Ethan is for football. And what I understood is, we will take you in football, but we're only gonna do it is if you guarantee you're gonna stay until you would co-op with somebody else.
So I guess my point was, if this is a 3-year agreement, and we consolidate in a year, does then Marion expect to play football with us, and then that is the end of the Freeman Canastota co-op?
It could potentially happen.
It's possible.
But
Or,
but
has Marion discussed that with you guys, that possibility?
doing a consolidation,
not
I don't know
been
if a guy can get a consolidation done in a year.
Well, I think and that's maybe another good reason to go with 3 years.
Right.
Because it takes time.
Yeah.
It's not a 1-year deal.
I'm just asking.
It
the
takes
guy
2
brought
to
up
3
because,
years to get everybody
all
on
of
the
a sudden,
same page.
Canastoga's probably not very happy
Right.
if we're making these agreements, and the expectation is there, and, if they think that the football's gonna be a long-term co-op, and all of a sudden, 2 years from now, we're saying,
Yeah, the big
Right,
deal
yeah.
is with 9-man, where's everybody gonna line up? And, the alignments, we're messing with this alignment for 1 year. They went to this 1-year alignment deal. Now we're aligning with all the other states, and then we're gonna see where this is all gonna end up with numbers and, will we have enough kids in 3 years to have our own football team? We might. Will we, and we might have that issue. And, I guess that's the chance we're taking. Otherwise, you're gonna look at Canastota and say, well, do we all get together and just say, let's go play 11-man football?
I think if you're forming an agreement that discussion should take place before it's finalized, just so everybody knows
Oh, yeah.
what the expectations are. I mean, that would be one of the things that I think should be added to this draft.
Have you talked to Larry?
Canastoga is fully aware of the conversations that we're having right now. As far as a cooperative perspective, but then also the potential for consolidation. The thing about that is, we kind of had an idea of potentially what a timeline for consolidation would look like, but that's already been, pushed back some, I think, just based on, kind of where our timeline, where it started and where our timeline is actually falling into place. So, but yeah, I mean, Canastota is fully aware of the conversations that we're having right now, and,
And in 2 years, this thing could fall apart too. And you don't know. And that's why, generally sports co-ops are the dating period between the communities. Are we in agreement together? Are our kids doing well together? Can we get along? And then eventually it goes into the consolidation generally. I mean, that's what happened over in Trip Delmont when I was in high school. It took time. I mean, we had Trip Delmont football for, 7, 8 years before they finally said, let's just get together as 2 communities because, everything's kind of going that way and everything's going well. But Delmont also didn't want to lose their identity with their basketball program because they had enough kids playing basketball and in high school to field, they had 10 boys for varsity but they didn't have enough kids to play football. That was their biggest deal. But then eventually their numbers dwindled and they consolidated, you know, like I said, I think it was 7 or 8 years later. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that was pretty close.
I don't wanna keep dragging it on, but I gotta ask, so if we're, let's say you have some Marion kids that get along really well with the Freeman kids, and it comes to football time, and they're like, well, I don't really wanna go play with Bridgewater Henry, do they have the option to say, I'd rather play with Freeman kids? And, I mean, it's
My
like
guess is they'd have to open
They'd
it.
have to open and roll.
They'd have to actually open and roll to do it, but they could.
Yes,
Right.
the option of open enrollment is always
So-
open for anybody.
So we would
And
have,
consolidating schools guarantees nothing either,
Right.
because you're not guaranteeing you're gonna get any of those kids, because you could have a bunch of them 3 years down the line saying, well, there's just too much, I just don't think I can play here, so I'm gonna go play someplace else. Or, I think there's a better football team over here, or basketball team over here, we're gonna go play someplace else. The way with open enrollment is now, nothing's guaranteed. That's the bad part. But you generally, you know, as time goes on, everybody gets along, and generally they'll say, okay, we're gonna stick here because we've had a good enough success in basketball or whatever sport there is. We're gonna stick it out. And, you know.
I just know of some kids from Marion that are good friends with my
Yes.
kids, and I believe they would probably rather play with my kids than go play with people that they don't know, and I think that's actually a reality that we might pick up a few players that way.
Well, and that's the.
But-
that's the
Called
case.
homeschooling.
I think that's a question.
That's actually probably-
He should be prepared to answer at the next public input meeting on consolidation, because if we're saying we're gonna do a 3-year co-op to feel each other out, then automatically everybody's thinking the consolidation is at least 3 years off. So that question's gonna come up, and
And generally, that's how long it takes to make everything come together.
I think, yeah, our original one was 2024 instead of 2025, right? That was the kind of the year we shot for when with the consolidation. I think, was it like a 3 to 4?
I do believe that the expectation of most of the Marion people that are in favor of consolidation, 3 years is not what they're thinking. They're thinking 2 or less.
Oh, really?
I wanna say that the original timeline for consolidation was, you know, we go through this year, we go through next year, and then fall of, what, 2022 would be what the
So like 2.5
original thing was. But, you know, the length of your co-op doesn't really matter on that end. I mean, you know, the bigger issue, I suppose, on that is more the Canastota thing than the actual Marion thing, because if you have your co-op, doesn't matter whether you say 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6, whatever you want to say. If you decide to consolidate, you just consolidate whenever it is, and, you know, you do, and those schools are gonna be together anyway. It's more a matter of, at that point in time, if that happens, what is Canastota gonna do? You know, are they gonna play, you know, are they okay with playing 11-man football? Or, you know, whatever the case happens to be there, and then I suppose there's a little bit of the Freeman Academy on that end too, because it's Marion and Freeman Academy going to Bridgewater Emory right now for football, and we consolidate with Marion, well, obviously it's Freeman Marion, then does Freeman Academy come with them? Because if that's the case, you might be looking at 11-man football anyway,
Yeah.
you know, and then Canastota would have to decide whether they're gonna go on their own or whether they're gonna stay with that, so there's definitely some conversations you'll have to have down the road. Like I said, and the main thing at this point in time with there being a lot of speculation is, at the very least, just keeping Canastota in the loop and letting them know what we're doing and thinking.
I know, the one thing I've heard the most about this co-op thing is the Class A thing, which, whatever, I'm not a huge opposed to that. But, I guess the other thing that, would be against a longer thing, and maybe you guys don't know this, or maybe you do already, but like as far as if we were to consolidate, would we automatically be Class A then? Like, would our numbers be such that we would go Class A?
We were close, right?
Well, if you went with just Marion, you would be B for 1 more year, and then after that,
Nobody knows.
well, after that, you're gonna be A.
No matter, for sure.
I mean, it's pretty, I mean, you can't say 100% because, but because our numbers are going up so much in the middle school right now,
Okay.
and their numbers are relatively, class size are relatively
Okay.
steady there, it's our numbers that would end up pushing us over the.
So that's, I mean, then, I guess I'm just asking like as negative to having a longer like, not that we're in it to just jump out of it, but, you know, like questions people are going to ask, if, you know, like, well, if we can say class B, why would we? But if we're class A anyway, then we want to bring it for sure. But anyway. So, I think through all of that, I think the answer is, it sounds like we're pretty solid on liking most of the stuff with a few tweaks.
Sure.
Yeah.
And now I think as far as that, we've got to try and figure out some point of time to have the public's input on it.
Well, maybe what you do, if you wanna get something out to the public before a final draft, is you just, as far as the academic eligibility policy say, just, instead of what's in there now, you just write in there, all three schools agree that they will operate under the same eligibility policies, and then you just take all the specifics out. And then that way you can still have time to figure that out later, and then people don't, you know, get real worked up about the fact that, you know, they don't get worked up about that one topic and let that
Ruin it
detract, you know, everything else, so.
all. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
When do we meet with Tom, for the consolidation thing? That's this month, isn't it?
We did, what did I send you there? Oh, you know what, I bet that meeting, that negotiation meeting on April 7th isn't gonna work.
It's around that time.
Because I think April 7th is that, when we said we were gonna have our public meeting for consolidation.
Okay.
Because he was gonna come to meet with you and I the 18th of March, somewhere in there. I think April 7th is that public meeting date.
So we need to change that.
Well, the public meeting wouldn't be till 7,
So
so you could still meet for negotiations at 6.
an hour. Okay. All right.
Can I just say,
No, I'm kidding.
I do feel strongly, this is just me, as a parent and also as somebody who's got a pretty good pulse in the community, I do think that you owe it to the public to have a meeting sooner rather than later on the sports co-op thing specifically. Just as a public relation move, if nothing else. Because who knows, you could have 400 people coming in here ready to burn this place down because you're gonna, and if that's the case, you're gonna get a pretty good sense of how the public feels. Now, I don't think that's gonna be the case, but I do think that you owe it to the public to sort of compartmentalize a little bit the sports co-op thing versus the consolidation thing. Because they're related, but they're kind of not. And so I just feel, is there gonna be too many cooks in the kitchen? You know, you always run that risk. But to your point, Mark, you know, you had several meetings on the football thing, and if you're talking multiple sports and don't have one, that could create some public problems. So, that's my opinion.
I think that's fine. I just think we just need to make sure that we're well organized before we go into a meeting, so there's not, I mean, you know, we certainly aren't gonna call it a final draft or anything like that, but we just need to make sure that we have the foundation in place, because if we don't, that's when you start having some issues there, because you're gonna get people pulling you in, you know, 20 different directions. So, as long as we can clean that up a little bit and get to the point where we feel comfortable enough with what's in there, even though you wanna accept input from, you know, the public, that's fine, but, you know, we just need to make sure that we're able to, you know, do what we need to do on that end.
So for sure then we should wait till after next Tuesday, if that's when the academy meets, in case they have tweaks that we need to discuss. And so maybe if we're since in the idea of time, maybe the end of next week, possibly, if that fits, or the beginning of the following week.
Yeah, I mean,
Whatever, if that fits in our schedule, if you guys think that.
so you're thinking, so, let's see, does Academy meet next week, or did they say they meet like the end of this week?
No, Tuesday, it's the following Monday or the following Tuesday, I don't remember which one
I
it is.
thought it was.
The 16th?
It was the 16th, I
Okay.
believe.
So.
I would say not the end of the week because it's the state term.
Okay,
So you're looking at the week of the 22nd. We could do it on Friday the 26th and skip prom. I'd be okay with that.
well, you wouldn't have to worry about 400 people showing up to burn down this place, there might be closer to 1,000 people.
I mean, we could shoot for something in that, like, even if it's like Wednesday the 24th or something like that. I don't, this time of year, I suppose, the night of the week probably doesn't matter as much as it would have during basketball season.
We should try and veer away from a Wednesday, probably,
During,
just,
I would say during
Wednesday-
Lent,
Wednesday's
probably
church-
not.
church night.
Yeah.
So Monday, Tuesday,
yeah.
I would say the 22nd.
22nd, Monday the 22nd, if we can.
Sure, let's keep it on Mondays, we like Mondays.
All right, I'll run that by them and see what they think. So are you thinking, if you're gonna do the meeting, is it gonna be, like, are you expecting that boards from all 3 schools are going to be there? Or is it just our board and then anybody from the public that wants to come?
I think we're representing the Freeman community, so I think that's
I mean, it
Or we're
makes
getting
no
our
difference.
input.
Whoever wants to come. I mean,
Right,
If people.
But it's going to be an
Marion,
official
if people
meeting
wanna come
of
from
the Freeman board.
Academy, that's fine.
Yeah, I think so, I think that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you
It'd
know.
be nice if they did come, because there are probably gonna be some questions geared towards them.
Right.
If they're not there. I mean, but yeah.
We could always just answer for them.
Yeah, that always works well.
But, yeah, anyway, so if we can do that, is everybody okay with that?
The 22nd.
Sounds good.
And everybody else, everybody's pretty much okay with everything else? We're good?
Is there a way to put that out there for them? That, I mean,
We've got that
I'll
beautiful.
be right
man
about
down
it this
there.
week, and I'll talk to this school about if there's gonna be a link up or where they can go find that. So I'll get that information out this week for sure.
So is there another way to do it? Because nobody reads the paper. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
I've got Gavin to show.
What time, Kyle?
What time works?
7 o'clock that night? Is that what you're
That
thinking?
sounds
That Monday?
great. Work for everybody?
And you said that is Monday, the 27th.
22nd.
Yeah. So if you want to put that in paper just to take up some space, you know.
I'll do that.
It's gonna be storm.
Full page ad.
Of course, you know, if he puts in a full-page ad, then we'll end up with a bill for Freeman School.
No, it's FOC, free of charge.
You can find a way to get that COVID money spent for some advertising.
I know how you newspaper guys work.
All right, well then I think, we're to executive session then. So we need to,
Can I ask
oh,
one thing?
hold on, yeah.
I think it was last meeting you mentioned about speakers for the football field. We didn't really do anything with
oh,
it.
please.
Do you want to look at?
Well, we basically already gave the guy to go ahead and do it.
Oh, okay.
That's what we talked about.
It's
I
already
thought,
done.
I thought we
Sorry.
moved it.
No,
Okay.
We're moving on that.
Yes.
We were hoping that, before our first track meet, maybe
Yeah,
we'll be
okay.
able to get rolling on
Yeah.
that. So.
All right, good.
All right, then we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Cody,
Second.
second by Mark. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're gonna be in executive session at 8:41. Ryan, did you want a copy?
I would sure like to see.
Anybody else want one?
I'll put